Coffee Company Limited has sparked a lot of controversy in the country. This agreement was signed, or at least the version that has been shared with the public, was signed on the 10th of February 2022. However, the original agreement was signed in 2015 and an amendment in 2017. The Permanent Secretary and Secretary to the Treasury says that this agreement does not create a monopoly for the buying of and exportation of coffee, something that many people have been saying the agreement does. The Attorney General says this agreement does not contravene any of Uganda's laws. As the public continues to discuss this, it will be remembered that coffee is a substantial earner of foreign exchange for the country. Therefore, interest in coffee is understandable. Who is telling the truth, and how do we ensure that coffee that brings a lot of money into the country is actually handled well and beneficial to all actors? That's what we dig into in the big debate today. My name is Iguma Gabriel, and welcome to the show. Let's meet our panelists for today's discussion.
Our panel tonight. Victoria Sechitoleko is the current Vice Chairperson of Private Sector Foundation Uganda. Sechitoleko is the former Minister for Agriculture in the Ugandan government and a representative of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization in China, Mongolia and South Korea. She was FAO sub-regional representative to the Eastern and Southern Africa based at Harare, Zimbabwe. Sechitoleko attended Makerere University in Kampala, where she attained a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture majoring in Farm Management and Extension, the Eastern and Southern Africa Management Institute ESAMI, where she obtained a certificate in Agriculture Project Identification, Appraisal and Management. She also attended the Zimbabwe Institute of Systemic Counseling and the Limpopo University in South Africa. Yusuf Nsibambi is a politician, lawyer, lecturer, businessman and activist who is a member of the Opposition Forum for Democratic Change Party. Nsibambi is the Mawokota South Member of Parliament and Shadow Minister for Works and Transport. Nsibambi, who also contested for the position of Deputy Speaker, has a wealth of expertise spanning from over 30 years of teaching experience at Makerere University Law School. He has in the past worked as the legal secretary of Greenland Group of Companies, Greenland Bank, Uganda Grain Milling, Entebbe Resort Beach and Greenland Insurance. Nsibambi attended Chibuli Secondary School for his O and A level and then Makerere University for a Bachelor of Laws degree. He would later enroll for a Master's in International Financial Crime at the University of Florida, United States of America. He also has a diploma in legal practice from the Law Development Center. Nsibambi has been an outspoken critic of the recently signed agreement between the government of Uganda and Uganda Vinci Coffee Company Limited, vowing to take legal action. David Bayingana is a businessman, coffee exporter and the managing director of Nyubukumbi Coffee Limited, which specializes in the processing and export of premium and specialty coffees. Bayingana and his team from Nyubukumbi Coffee own and operate a coffee processing facility at Kazigo in the foothills of Mount Rwenzori in Fort Portal, and with a dedicated supply network comprised of more than 3,000 farmers in 12 sub-counties. The Rwenzori Ranges, which rise up to the height of 51 meters, are renowned for producing among the world's best Arabica. Agnes Chirabo is the Executive Director of the Food Rights Alliance. Chirabo works to advance policy, legal and policy reforms in agriculture and food governance that promote and protect people's rights to adequate food that uphold people's dignity. As a campaigner, she has designed and implemented a campaign on a diverse spectrum of issues that impact on food availability, accessibility, stability, and mutilation. She has significantly contributed to agendas on public finance for agriculture, land and water resource governance, seed security, biodiversity and farmers' rights, intellectual property rights in agriculture and food systems. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel tonight.
Ladies Ladies and gentlemen, well, that leaves you, who is the viewer. Your views are very important to this conversation. So interact with us using the hashtag #CTVBigDebate. Well, I'm seated in our studios with three of our guests. One of our guests will be joining us via virtual means, and that's the Honorable Victoria Sechitoleko. And when she is available, we will let you know. Well, welcome to the big debate. For each one of you, it's the first time you're appearing on CTV, and we are glad that we are hosting you. Well, I'd like to get your initial thoughts, just to start this conversation, your initial thoughts on the agreement that we're talking about, this agreement in the coffee sector. I will start with Honorable Nsibambi, considering this was tabled in Parliament, and pretty much that's where the discussion seemed to have started.
Yes, good evening, viewers. It's unfortunate I'm not composed, but I'll try to compose myself. We just left the house, and specifically just like an hour ago, the House has, the Agriculture Committee has come up with a report recommending the cancellation of this agreement, saying it is irregular and illegal. So we're all excited about it, and maybe it will make my participation in this debate a little bit easier, because this time around the decision was non-partisan. But from the onset, as a lawyer, I would say maybe this is not something you call an agreement. An agreement presupposes parties to an agreement. So there must be two parties to an agreement. So this time around, the first party was supposed to be Uganda, but in essence, Uganda is not in the agreement. You find individuals signed on behalf of government without going through the due process and proper procedures. It is surprising that the Minister of Agriculture is not aware completely. The other day, the Solicitor General, who is supposed to clear agreements, again feigned ignorance. So the Attorney General just came in to interpret clauses over a document signed saying it does not contravene the law. That's a different matter. But it should have been initiated by the parent ministry or a user entity or agency. So this time around, the Ministry of Agriculture ought to have been involved in this whole transaction. Thereafter, it had to be submitted to the Solicitor General, who is supposed to be under the Attorney General, to clear the agreement. But the Attorney General came in just say, okay, when I look at the provisions of the agreement, the articles, the clauses, they do not offend the law. So you cannot enter into such an agreement without clearing, without going through due process, without exhausting all the internal consultations. So in a way, there was no party called Uganda. Then when you go to the second party called Vichy, the company in itself is registered in Uganda for carrying on or doing business, but it has no known address. It's actually the agreement presupposes we are supposed to create an address for that particular company. We are supposed to provide them land, clear land, and it was given to them recently in industry area. But the agreement was executed sometime 5 years ago, only that it is now regularized or reviewed or amended just recently. So now we really have no company called Vinci on the ground. There are established companies in this area which ought to have been given this kind of opportunity. I'll go to that later. I had the opportunity, viewers, to visit I don't want to call it a sister company, but another company in the group, assuming Vinci existed, where Ms. Panetti is again the chief executive and director. That company is the company now vested with a mandate to construct a hospital at Lubowa. Again, fortunately, this evening, again, Parliament cancelled the payment of promissory notes, and the Minister of Finance is going on ground to ascertain what is happening with a view of handling the matter in a different manner. So that specific lady and the co-directors are the same people under Vinci and they have failed to perform on an area or obligation. So definitely I can vouchsafe that even Vinci does not exist. So at that, as a lawyer, if you have no two parties to an agreement, you have no agreement.
Okay. We will come back to you for... Yeah, okay, yes.
Then the other issues, maybe if I got a chance, I will explain. They are really more fundamental. It contravenes the Constitution in a way that denies other Ugandans and established companies the right to employment. They have invested in this specific industry, but they have been excluded by clauses which give a monopoly to an individual. That is unconstitutional. Then two, again, it is subjecting the country to a bad deal. You have the duty as government, as agencies, to ensure that the country's economy is not put at stake. Again, that is another constitutional obligation breached. Then, in a sentence, it also offends other established laws to do with procurement and competitive bidding. So the agreement itself is not only irregular, but it is illegal because you have to go through process of open bidding, and that kind of agreement executed would contravene these other laws. Right. Of course, there are other legal contraventions which I don't want to subject this debate to the law per se, but it is a questionable agreement legally, and also to do with the general practice and common sense. No one would subject a country to this kind of agreement when coffee specifically is the major income earner for the country.
All right. You stated that you visited a company. You didn't want to call it a sister company, but a company that is also headed by the same proprietor that heads Uganda Vinci. You went to a physical location, right?
Yes, and we were denied access for 30 minutes. We attended the meeting, we put questions, we demanded that they should give us documents, and the lady said, we're not going to give those documents. We said, now you come to Parliament and be subjected to further inquiry. And I said, I will not come. And she's protected by special forces. So, and she didn't come. And up to now, the two committees have never come up with a report. Recently, now we only got information and a request that we should now allocate an additional 361 billion for her to
yeah. And that's the promissory note that you're saying Parliament has. Okay. Well, there is an address, plot 2 Summit View, Kololo, that is given as an address for...
That is an address of service. I'm talking about physical, because we are dealing with an industry, sort of like a person who is claiming to be involved in a major industry. The address of service, I can even say care of this place. That is address of service. We are talking of, if you're talking about my colleague here, he has somewhere where you say now this one is a coffee dealer or is he involved in coffee.
All right. Madam Chiravo, your initial thoughts as we start the debate this evening.
Good evening, viewers, and thank you so much for hosting us this evening. This particular deal is an amazing deal. And in all forms, by the way, in all forms, it is quite very, very amazing. I also got so excited listening to counsel, and senior counsel, I hear him being referred to as such. I'm not a landy fellow, but listening to him giving us that whole legal account. You know what was very unfortunate is that the PST immediately came out and was hiding behind the law. And for me, that puts me off. People to think, even if counsel, this deal was legally right, it doesn't make it morally, socially, economically, and politically right. That's number one. Number two, this is just a tip of the iceberg of what is exactly happening and how we are managing business in this country and how we are regarding the people of Uganda who are deriving livelihoods painfully from these sectors, from these businesses where nobody cares. It is just of recent that the coffee law is proposing that all farmers, coffee farmers in this country be registered. Maybe that one will give us an account, and a coffee farmer would have a feeling that actually, I think I'm known by government, but as you know how we conduct business in this country, until some other interested party comes and says I need a full record of all the farmers, nothing is going to happen, is likely to happen. So the farmers and these business fellows here, they are out there suffering on their own, and they have been able to shoulder this subsector for all these years, painfully.
Well, probably this is a way of organizing the sector to make sure the farmers, the exporters start to benefit.
You cannot organize the sector by exclusion. You can't do that. You can't do that. And if we had all the intentions to organize our sector, then our first priority would be with these colleagues of ours, would be with the farmers, or our farmers in this country. And we know that we actually have actors in the coffee sector, and many of them are domestic. And I repeat, they have painfully sustained this sector to be able to give this country close to $700,000 million, painfully. They have no exemptions. They do not have support. They are using the national grid at that cost that we all know, that painful cost that we all know. I know one friend of mine who is in the coffee business, and a couple of months ago you could not find him. Every time you call him, he says, I'm in Kasawo, I'm in Chagwe, I have gone to Mali. And I was like, what is this whole thing about? He said, I want to go and see that I'm sure I will get the supplies. And I was like, who is guaranteeing you? He said, nobody guarantees me, so I go and give money to someone that I'm not very sure that in any case, if they don't find me the coffee, it will be a bad deal. So you see, these are the people that have painfully been rewarding and bequeathing this country with that much. And we are talking about, Gabriel, we are talking about millions of people that are surviving by that sector. And you see somebody mortgaging it to an individual on the promise of 264 jobs. You mortgage 12 million people to one individual. But you asked us for the quick thoughts. I just wish to let the viewers know that we are debating this, and we are lucky that the debate has come to this level. It's not new. This has happened in the fisheries sector, and everybody kept quiet. Anyway, we are not fishermen or fisherwomen, and they never got the opportunity. The story that we are getting from the fisheries sector is a different story from what exactly is happening. Who knows what happened to cotton in this country, by the way? We all grew up knowing that the key cash crops, they were C cash crops, that is coffee, cotton, and copper in Chirembe. So the copper in Chirembe is no more. So it is now coffee. Cotton, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. The little that I know that happened to cotton is that the biggest chunk of the support and financing is coming from the private sector under their umbrella of the GNAs. And as the country, we are not investing. So nobody actually pretty knows what happens to cotton. It died. Then we had tobacco. I don't know what happened. That one also disappeared somewhere. Of recent, we have heard the cries of the sugarcane people. And we are okay, we didn't mind. So eventually it has come to coffee. Basically what I need to tell viewers is that there is a very interesting way we are handling investments in this country. And I don't know how we grew the appetite of rewarding investments to individuals at the cost of the majority.
Okay.
Gabriel, we have just looked at somewhere with you. We looked at the theme of the budget that Honorable and colleagues are considering in Parliament. Monetizing the economy, commercializing and what? Is this the form of commercialization that makes the majority excluded from the money economy that we're talking about? So it is actually sad. My initial submission is that when we come here to debate this deal, we are not debating it in isolation.
Okay.
That is number one. Two, we are not debating coffee as the black gold of this economy. We are debating people's livelihoods. We are debating domestic investment. We are debating domestic revenue. We are debating the foreign exchange. And we are debating our money, because we know there is also a fraction of money that is being proposed to be given to this particular investment. And interestingly, Gabriel, in the agreement, you cannot see how much money this messiah that we are smooching around is said to invest in the sector, such that we give to them all of the favors that we have never thought of giving to these people and others that have painfully invested in this subsector.
All right, let's hear from Mr. Bengana as one of the people who's been investing in the sector for a while. Your initial thoughts about this agreement? He could be very happy with the...
happy with what? Well, first of all, good evening, viewers. It's nice to be here and have a chance to share some thoughts on this whole thing. Of course, for me, I want to bring, I have listened to my colleagues, and I want to bring a business perspective to this, because as somebody who is dealing with 3,000 or so smallholders in Rwenzori, obviously the impact is going to be felt in one way or another. And for me, what comes to mind immediately when I heard about that whole thing, I've been in all sorts of banter with my colleagues and all sorts of things, because I don't think that it's a practical way of doing this, even from a business perspective. It's not something that can be practically pulled off, because if you look at the landscape, the coffee landscape in this country, we have about 3 million smallholder farmers. We export about, I think, between 6 and 7 million bags. So on average, it means that every smallholder produces about 2 bags of coffee. That's what it says. So for me, I am wondering how somebody, I think people got into this deal without looking at the semantics of how this whole sector works. Because the way it works is that the exporters and processors like ourselves have to go and woo the farmers. She doesn't have coffee, he doesn't have, I don't have coffee, neither do you. So I don't think that it's a practical thing that can work out very well, because I am wondering how we have a commitment for this number of bags, which we all get from the stakeholders. This is something which is a function of the sort of establishment and infrastructure that you have around the country. And I am very sure that that company doesn't have that infrastructure, because I know all the people who have the infrastructure for the thing. So I don't even think that it's something that could work. So I've been trying very hard to not overthink about it, because if it played itself out, the bosses of this whole thing are the farmers who produce that coffee. That's the long and short of it. And it's all down, because the coffee in Uganda is a trickle-down thing. If you have 3 million smallholders and you have 6 million bags, so who is the boss over here? So you have so many companies in this country who invest time and trouble and go to banks and borrow money to collect coffee from people. We all have to entice them using incentives, because they have always an option to sell to her or to him or to you. So personally, I've not been losing a lot of sleep because I don't think that it will see the light of day in terms of the practicality of implementing the whole thing, you understand? So I think the whole thing, from the onset, I want to say that yes, we have a problem. I'm sure Honorable Nsibambi here knows that we have a problem. We have been talking about value addition we talk about it day in and day out, and one of the things which we could do very well here, which would serve our coffee sector much better, give farmers higher prices, is if we were doing incremental value to coffee. So if you look at it, it looks like a very good thing, but there's the practicality is almost non-existent. I don't know if you get my point.
It looks like a good thing for who?
Sorry?
It looks like a good thing for
no,
who?
if it was for value addition is always a good thing.
The principle of
the principle of value
addition.
addition. Right. Because, for example, the country that earns the most money from coffee is the US, and I think followed by Germany. Germany gets all its coffee from here, almost 70, 60, 70%, and they make probably 20 or 30 times more money than we do. But this is something which has to be carefully caricatured. You don't just steamroller people into this whole thing, into this whole process. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Yes, so that's my take on the whole thing. I am still wondering how we are going to implement this whole thing. I don't even want to put too much thought into the whole thing, because for me, I know that people I have to deal with. When I know that Honorable Nsibambi came with more money and more incentives, that's my problem. From a local level, you understand what I'm saying? So I don't see how... And
that's at the level of the farmer.
Yeah. The farmers are the ones who grow.
Yes.
I don't see how...
But you buy to export.
Yes.
But
like for us, we deal with 3,000 farmers. They are smallholder farmers. They're organized in about 16 cooperatives in Bunyangabo, Ntoroko, and Kabarole. And we are always there competing with so many people. And we have to put our best foot forward. That's the way it works. So I don't see how Honorable Nsibambi can walk in and come and it's not... it's very,
so even when the commitment is that before we export, we will ensure that you have the quantity and grade that you want.
Well, first and foremost, I don't know if you want to work this thing backwards. Let's work it backwards if you like. Now, we have to go and purchase the coffee from the people. Those are the owners of the coffee. The moment the farmers get disincentivized, and we used to find them in those kind of situations, because where we found them, they had small micro loans because they were not getting... you have a situation in this country where middlemen mortgage gardens. I'm telling you the reality, what happens on the ground. They mortgage gardens because the owner of the garden is not interested in the whole thing. Once he mortgages somebody, out he goes, you understand? So he's not interested. So the middleman is the one who harvests and all this. So if you look at it from a practical perspective, I'm wondering how the whole thing can work. This whole thing works on incentives. And I think if we were looking at something of value addition, which I don't want to put it in, I'm putting it in the perspective because we're always all fighting for value addition. There is a much better way that we could structure such incentives, such things. Like I think my colleagues are saying. I think you got the point. Eh?
Yeah. I'll come to you for that much better way. I've been informed that the Honorable Victoria Sechitoleko is now online. Honorable, can you hear me?
Yes, good evening to you.
Very good evening to you as well. Good to see you. Well, you caught us at a point, and I've been told that you were able to listen to the submissions from our panelists. Each of us was giving our initial thoughts in relation to this agreement that has caused quite a bit of discussion in the country. Let's get yours as well.
For me, of course, the first day when I read it, my reaction was slightly different. But now that a week or so has gone by and I have seen the reaction of the country, I'm one of the happiest people in Uganda now. because given the importance of coffee, it has always been relegated to last pages of the newspapers, even the Ucda TVs. You don't mention us. You start telling us about the exchange rate of the dollar as if we are all handling dollars. But now, finally, coffee is headlines. Coffee is household word. Coffee is now being talked about by every radio, be it up country or Kampala. So, for me, that saying of there is never a dark cloud without a silver lining, I'm concentrating on the silver lining. The young people, the older people, even the school children are finally talking about coffee. So my reaction is I'm glad that somebody came up with this shock, which has managed to shake everybody awake to say, hey, what is happening to coffee? We cannot allow this. This is going to happen. People who normally don't want to read are finally reading the fine print. So as far as I'm concerned, I have always wanted people to think and know and participate in what they are doing, participate actively, not passively. Finally, through this terrible happening, I've got what I've always wanted. Coffee is headlines.
Honorable Sechitoleko, you have mentioned that, you read the agreement initially, you had certain thoughts. After a week, those thoughts have, probably changed. I remember, because I interacted with you, part of your initial thoughts were that this agreement does not create a monopoly. Is that one of your thoughts that has changed, or do you still maintain that in your view there's no monopoly and no problem in that regard?
I maintain it fully, simply because I know the statistics. Honestly, last year, that is last coffee year, 2020-2021, Uganda produced 8 million bags of coffee. This agreement is talking about 60,000, tons of coffee. But in the first year, they are talking about 28,000 tons of coffee. And 28,000 tons can honestly come from a small district like Kalangala or Tambala and supply this person. And it will not, the 28,000 would be like about 1% of the coffee we produce in Uganda. So should I join the panic because somebody wants to have monopoly over 1% of the coffee? Or when and if it goes to 60,000, that will be about above 10% of the coffee. But that is for the figures I'm using are for 2020, 2021. I'm definitely sure, according to the statistics of Ucda, this figure is going to change for 2021, 2022. So by the time we are done with this coffee year, 60,000 tons will be about 10% of all the coffee produced in Uganda. So even if it is a matter of language, English, when somebody says, because I'm taking 10%, I have a monopoly, really, do we understand what we are talking about? That is one. Two, Uganda may have its problems here and there, but we are still a law-abiding country. We have got laws, we have got our constitution, we have got the Ucda Act, which has just been recently passed. This contract does not mention Ucda at all, does not mention MAIF at all. So knowing how government works, for me, all that this contract has done, as I've said, is shake up the system, get everybody talking, and I'm happy. So have I changed my mind? No. There's nothing to get excited about. Like I said, if I had the powers, I would just throw it in the basket and tell everybody, go get on with your work. Tell the young people, go join the coffee sector.
Let me just read one article section of this agreement. This is 4.2 that talks about coffee supply. And just reading it in reaction to what you have said, because this is what it states. Government undertakes that it will take all reasonable measures to give priority of supply of coffee to the company before registering any contract or acknowledging any arrangement for the export of coffee beans, including screen 18 and above, so that the company will have ample supply of coffee to sustain its operations. This is the provision that's being interpreted as giving a monopoly to this company. When you talk about screen 18 and above, you know, this is high grade. This, and you know, not a lot of our coffee reaches, you know, that level. Isn't this giving preferential treatment? Isn't this giving some kind of a monopoly, you know, to the very best of the coffee made in, or, you know, produced in Uganda?
Yeah, but if you read it again, and you read where they say they will whatever reasonable, within reasonable whatever. There is no way government of Uganda, which has no garden where they grow their coffee, for as long as that contract does not say that this contract revokes everything, including starting with the Constitution, the Coffee Act, every rule and regulation of Uganda, until and unless you first revoke those, there is no way you can implement it. Actually, for me, as I was reading this through this contract the third or fourth time, I came to a conclusion that I think somebody was making noise. They wanted this contract and whatever. So a piece of paper was written to give them something to keep them quiet. But there is, even from the way it is written, there is no way anybody can implement it. One of the sections in that contract, which I know has excited some people, is where they say that they will set the price to the farmer. Of course, there is, first of all, that Italian woman is not going to come onto my farm and say, I have come to buy your coffee. When government says it is going to deliver the coffee, I've been, you know, as I was reading, I was laughing to myself. Who are they going to send to come to my farm? Are they going to send the police? Because now we have the agriculture police. Will the agriculture police come and pick the coffee? Are they going to send the army? Is it Operation Wealth Creation? Who is going to come to my, because this coffee, like my colleague has just said, most farmers will have a bag or 2 or 5. So who is going to go house to house collecting my coffee? And by the time most of us sell our coffee, it is too chivoko, it is not held. So that question of screen 18, are we going to have the police standing in every hulling factory so that when they see that you have hulled and size 18 beans have come out of your factory, it should go to Madame Vince? I mean, the whole thing is a joke. And I wish everybody
I don't want to interject.
But as I've said,
let's hear from Honorable
I have
Sivambi
great
on
respect
that.
to Honorable Victoria. Is not only just a consultant. First of all, he's my neighbor on Chimera Road here. But I have really great respect for him. He's a consultant.
For her.
For her, you know. Now, Honorable Victoria, you see, you are talking from a perspective of a consultant and not an on-ground businessman. Personally, I'm also involved in business. I can just, I can give 3 examples. She talked about the fishing industry. I'm a member of parliament who is supervising 7 landing sites in Impigi district. We sat and agreed with the Minister of Agriculture, so I was really nominated by my colleagues to be in charge of really supervising those landing sites. As we talk right now, there are only about 7 players to do with the exportation of fish moths, and they are all foreigners. There's no police to supervise, but on the ground, you find it's hard for you to participate as an ordinary Ugandan or company. Specifically, the structures, you definitely find yourself constrained to get involved. You look at the importers of tiles. When Goodwill in Kapeka started the factory, it is now hard to talk of importation of tiles without necessarily having police or men doing this or that. the phosphate industry, the gold miners in Buwekura, the rice importers from Tanzania. So I think it is very simple. The moment you have such an agreement, enforcement becomes very easy. The system is really clear. It will be hard for you, an ordinary exporter, to really start an industry or a coffee factory which adds value. So I think we should also consider, it may not even be looking at controlling the industry, but could also go to compensation. Because he said we only have a few bags which cannot even maybe meet the targets and the quota to be given to Vinci. But there's a clause that the moment you fail to raise that grade and the quota, then you compensate her. So maybe it is one way of now creating a basis of a suit, sort of like a money laundering channel for her to be compensated. So all those are matters which must be considered. We should be wary of such an agreement coming in. Why do you have to have an agreement if there's no other ulterior motives or any controls or exclusivity? They should have come in like my colleague here and trade generally. Right.
Mr.
So I think we're really worried about it.
You seem to have the same view that this is hard to implement, and you're taking it from the point of view of the farmer has their coffee. The farmer will choose who to sell to. The agreement...
Exactly.
Well, but yes, but the agreement speaks about the point of exporting. The farmer does not attempt to export. It's players like you who have got from the farmer and now you want to export. Yeah. And the regulations have a provision.
Okay, I can...
Just a second. The regulations have a provision that in order for you to export, you need a license. Yes. And government comes in at that point.
Yes,
and government has made an agreement with somebody that before I allow somebody to export, you will receive this quota. Yeah. Isn't that where you're going to get out?
Let me first elucidate, from a practical perspective. Do you know what screen 18 is? Screen 18 is a bean size. So if you have 1 kilogram of coffee, it is going to have this, what they call a screen distribution. So the bean sizes are different because it's a plant. So screen 18 is the biggest size, then it goes down 17 and so on and so forth. And generally speaking, screen 18 beans fetch a slightly higher price than the rest. This has nothing to do with the quality of the bean or the taste or something, because they came from the same tree. Now, when we collect coffee, we get it from farmers before it is screened.
Exactly.
So when you go to a hulling thing and you grade, you get screened. By that time, I am the owner.
And that's...
Okay.
Yes.
So
and the emphasis
if you
here
disincentivize
seems to leave the farmer out, because
no, I am telling you, if you disincentivize me, then I leave it with her. She can do what she wants with her coffee as a farmer. That's why I'm telling you it's not a practical way of doing it. Because me, I am spending money, paying money to the farmer because I am looking for a certain thing. Okay. So I come to her thing. If they are messing me up on this side, then I don't buy her coffee. It's as simple as that. You get the point. So ownership actually happens. I want to tell you one thing. Most of the grading plants in this country are located in Kampala. In Kasese, there are 2. In other parts of the country, I don't want to talk a lot about grading, where you can do final grading that you want to export. And you cannot export coffee before you grade it. Okay? So my contention is that we have not looked at this whole value chain carefully, and it is going to bring a very big problem, because you need to look at all the people who are exporting. And I want to tell you about the people who are exporting in Kampala. If you know anything about the coffee sector in this country, you'll know that 85% of the coffee is exported by companies which are multinationals. Okay? Now, you're not going to get a company which is a multinational and tell them, it's like over telling what Fairway Hotel to send their people to sell. You understand? I just get out of business. I'll just go back home. Do you get my point? So all the other companies which we are talking about are much, much bigger. We are very small players in this place, by the way, like us. So do you get my point? So it is not, my contention is that it is not a practical thing that can be implemented. And that's why I'm not losing sleep over the thing, because I don't think that, because I'm just wondering now, if
So
you want to
again,
get your screen
you should
18,
have left this thing the way it is, and
no,
then they try to implement
it could have been structured in a different way.
Okay.
Totally, it could have been structured in a different way. For example, if it was about value addition, which we all agree, because incidentally, if you had a company which was roasting coffee, it means that there's value addition. Probably it means that a lot of the premium can accrue to farmers. That's how the thing generally works. So I think the execution has been, I don't want to use very bad words, but it's not implementable in the form that it is in. Do you get my point?
Yes.
Screen 18 is in the farm. It's not so, and by the time it comes to Kampala as Screen 18, it is no longer belongs to the farmer. Now, for me, who was going to buy, you want to take all the Screen 18, then I'm not going to buy. If I don't buy, then you have to go to the farmer. If you want to go to the farmer, you have to have a network. This thing could have been implemented in an era like the one where we had CMB, okay? Because CMB had a monopoly over exports.
This is Coffee Marketing Board.
Yes, okay? It had a monopoly over exports, and nobody was mandated to export except CMB. So everybody used to end up, I'm sure, Mr. Nsibambi and had know about, because this is something most people don't relate with, but by the time they divested CMB and all that sort of stuff, this is what created all those other companies. So under the era of CMB, so for me, I think that their thing was poorly structured, because there are many ways that you can skin a cat if you want to do that sort of stuff. Probably more legal ones and things which are more palatable to people, because this thing is about palatability, and palatability, at the end of the day, it boils down to the farmer, because they're the producer. You are not in the garden doing anything with coffee. So if you disincentivize me, I will just go home. We have been facing those things with guys who mortgage gardens.
Agnes would like to say something, but a question that's now ringing in my mind is, so who was consulted for government to come up with this kind of agreement? Because surely, do you come up with an agreement that
Which
you
is
know
fertile.
is not going to be, cannot be implemented? Well, Agnes.
You see, I told you earlier that the trouble you can get in easily is looking at this particular agreement
In isolation.
in isolation. And the other unfortunate bit is that I have talked to some people who are in coffee, and many of them carry the same view of this agreement may not be easy to implement. It isn't practical. But you see, the framers of this agreement know actually what they are doing. They may not have been so interested in seeing it practically implemented the way we are discussing it, but looking for something else from it. Because you have ably said that once you're frustrated, you leave me alone with my coffee as the farmer. And he also gets frustrated and does the same. And he also does the same. So me, the farmer...
The 3 million smallholders.
Yes, we the 3 million smallholder farmers who solely derive our livelihood from this coffee, you have delivered us on the slaughter table. So there are so many ways of skinning it, and actually, in that case, while listening to you, it makes me even more worried that it is easier to frustrate you guys and you get out of it and you go into other business, and then these people get the big catch. Even if they don't get it in the short run, it could be in the long run. These people are talking about 10 years. The other aspect is that we either get the coffee or get the money. It is what is reflected in this agreement. So we either get the coffee or we get the money. So the framers of this agreement, they know what they want. And I'm telling you, I'm happy that we are having this debate. Because one, they never expected that the debate will come to this level. And I don't want any person to resign at this juncture. Let us join the forces of our voices, because what other weapon do we have anyway? Let us join in the forces of the forces of our voices. I have been somewhere saying, when you look at such things happening, You know what is happening in the policy space of our government? That increasingly our government is getting captured. And we actually have to join forces to liberate it, such that it can legislate, it should come up with policies that do not cause us to debate the decision the head of the household has done. Because everybody is saying, I know he will not be able to implement it. You know, that is a vote of no confidence in the head of the what? On the head of the household. So for me, my worry is these guys are either going to get the coffee or they are going to get the money. Because if you all get frustrated, you're just a handful. Okay. So around 20, 17 or 20, you all get frustrated, you go and do other business, and that is actually where the big catch is. And my other suspicion is that today we may not see how these people are going to force Honorable Secretary Ko, a farmer, to sell to them her coffee. You will sell because you're not going to eat it. You're not going to eat it.
No, she can plant matoke or something else.
But you already have the coffee for that season.
Sorry?
You already have the coffee for that season.
This is a long-term argument. It's not a short-term argument. If you frustrate me, you know, when I first went to Kabarole, I used to find people having, there are guys who are chopping coffee to plant matoke.
Yes.
They have debates in the bar in the evening about this one, oh, you don't get money. So
they cut down.
It's a very delicate kind of thing. And people make drastic decisions. They just cut the whole thing and finish.
And we don't want to go that way. Yeah. We don't want to go that way. My worry is that, one, we need to motivate people and give them hope, because so many people have lost hope, and there is no single decision, unfortunately, that the government does that actually is viewed as one that restores hope of the people and see that really government is standing in for them. So we need to talk to the coffee actors, the farmers, the investors like Mr. Bayingana and others. Please, 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 pedal on. Pedal on. Let us continue planting our coffee, but we must have this debate, because if it isn't the coffee robbed, it is our money that is going to get robbed.
All right. Can we have a quick, discussion here, reflection on the incentives that, in the agreement? I'd like to get quick views on the incentives. Honorable, if I could begin with you, and it would be good to hear from, the exporter later on, if these are incentives they have ever got or even smelt in the past.
Yeah, first of all, again, from the legal perspective, these incentives are irregular and illegal. Of course, the Minister of Finance has the power to waive certain taxes, but the other specific areas where it's a no-go area. You see, you cannot, for example, waive NSS, National Social Security Fund remittances and requirements. Basically, that is entrenched. There's no way you can waive, because it's not yours. It's right to an employee, whether Ugandan or not. An employee is an employee, and his or her rights must be protected. That was waived. The subsidy to do with water and electricity is irregular and unfair, because we're all involved in businesses. You do construct or come up with a power line up to your plant, and the moment you install it like this, it becomes a umeme facility. It must be zero balance. But now they are supposed to pay, is it 5%? 5 cents, which is really very unfair and discriminatory. So I think, again, that is also irregular and illegal. And then I understand they're not supposed to pay again for 10 years. So pay as you earn. Pay as you earn. Basically, that is unheard of. You cannot waive pay as you earn. You can really give incentives, but waiving pay as you earn, definitely, and other people are paying, still that is discriminatory. But it's not surprising. In this country, if you purport to be a foreign investor, you are protected. Local investors are really being squeezed. So I think fundamentally for me, I'm very unhappy with this kind of exemptions and waivers and so-called incentives.
Honorable Sechitoleko, you are vice, chairperson, private sector. Are these incentives that your members receive?
I think now that he has mentioned the other incentives, what I want, the incentive I want to comment on, which is actually in my sector, is getting screen 18 and above. The whole thing, just like Mukumbi, the gentleman from Mukumbi has explained, is just not practical. Like I said, for me, as I was looking at this contract, I was wondering what is the thing behind the thing? Exactly what are they after? Because really, more than 80% of the companies which are exporting coffee, which are the ones who will be actually physically holding the screen 18, are multinationals. And in their contract, there is no revocation of all the contracts we've made with all those. So how on earth is anybody going to implement that incentive? Because you sit somebody down and you say, I'm going to decree that any coffee screen 18 and above will come to you. How? Because from a farm, if you get, let's say, 3 bags, maybe half a bag or a quarter a bag will be screen 18. So all of us will be trekking to some Gombolola headquarter or parish headquarter to say, in fact, you can't go to Gombolola headquarter because all the coffee is already in Kampala and we find screen 18. Then you have to declare it, or else you go to jail for not declaring size 18, screen 18. In my view, most of these are the promised incentives, because like really when you start touching NSSF, the 5 previous years, Uganda has spent the 5 previous years discussing NSSF. Everybody is now trying to comply. Then government turns around and says, I have got the power to make and unmake. So for you and only you will not pay NSSF. There is something which is not right about this contract. Like I've said, there must be something which is the thing behind the thing. That is one. But about these incentives and the paying, let's say not paying this tax and the other tax, I think, I guess I know why the Ministry of Agriculture, like the minister, just distanced himself from it, because he doesn't know, he was not consulted, he's not party to it. But what I know, because of the interaction between Private Sector Foundation and MAIF, is that MAIF is actively working on coffee to make sure that more people join the coffee sector, that we improve the value. Because you see, when somebody says that this Vince is coming in order to do value addition really does not start at screen 18 link. It starts from the type of seedling you plant, how you tend your garden, how you harvest your coffee, how you handle your coffee beans, all the way to Kampala before you start seeing screen 18. That is where the real value addition. You know, when Mr. Bengana said when we talk about screen 18, it has nothing to do with the aroma of the coffee. It is just the size. The aroma is a different thing, because if you have a big bean and you leave it in the rain, certainly the aroma won't be good. So when we talk about these incentives, especially incentives where we are talking about value addition, some of these things are a little bit difficult to tie in one bag and give to anybody.
All right, Mr. Bengana, these incentives, and since we've all been trying to add value to coffee, has any of your members, even by rumor, received these kinds of incentives?
Well, I heard about most of the incentives from here. You know, I've not really bothered with this thing. The incentives, I'm sure he has the legal position on the incentives.
No income tax, no VAT, no excise duty, no pay as you earn, no NSSF, electricity at 5 cents. lease the land.
Ours is usually a hustling sector where all they are hustling. If you sleep for about, no, honestly speaking, you sleep for 20 minutes, that's the end of the whole. Because like the area where we are, there are so many players who are busy fighting. Most of them are the other 85% people who I have told you. So we have our quotas. Your quota is defined by the amount of money and facilities that you have. That's what defines your quota. Okay? So
if you have no zero balance,
if you don't
processing.
Well, if the season finds you and you didn't have, you are sleeping, then you sleep until next year. That's how it works. So yeah, that's how we are managing our things, really.
And you see
How does government come in
to
assist?
Well, first of all, the contracts that they're talking about. You know how contracts work in UCDA? Everybody has, first of all, you have to be registered by UCDA as an exporter, which is not enough because they have to inspect every single container and they give you specific clearance for that particular container. So the export license is a blanket arrangement, so they give you for 1 calendar year from September up to August of the next year, and then every time that you need to export something, they have to do it because they have to then check the quality. This is where the screen 18s and 15s of, the screen distribution and so on. And if the coffee is not of good quality, they can decline to give you a license and you're not allowed to export that. So that's how the UCDA thinks. So I haven't really heard about
Just a second. With that explanation, at that point, can't government then compel you to sell to this particular company?
When I used my money?
Yes.
How? Tell me, I want you to explain the mechanism, how you're going to do that. I go to a bank, I put my house in a mortgage thing, do the thing, come and buy her coffee, then I export it, grade it, all this stuff.
You're ready to export, but UCDA has to give you...
Which one? Has to give me. You do it once, I don't do it again. That's the end of the whole story.
Okay, so the position you're taking is this, that if government actually tries to implement this agreement the way it is, you will abandon.
It's a step behind from you. I don't see how we can reach that step. Because for the coffee to reach that stage, just to give you a rough idea, a container of coffee, I think since the prices went up, is probably about $100,000, $100,000. So people go and borrow themselves up to here, to the neck. Everybody does it. Because I don't think there's anybody who has enough money to go in and do that sort of stuff. So there is no incentive. If the thing is not working, then you're going to maize. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I don't have to put myself up for that sort of... Because it's of my own volition to go and purchase the whole thing. So I bring one, you do that, and that's the end of the story. It's not a practical thing, to be honest with you. Because how do we get to that point? I do it I do all this stuff, then I grade, then I get 18, my 15s and all this sort of stuff.
And then you come and say,
and then you...
First we are buying the 18.
No, we're not giving you a license.
For the 18, until we give this person the quota that they have.
We're not giving you a what do you call it, the specific for the container, because you have to give it to Agnes. It's not practical, because I went to the bank. You didn't.
I think just a second.
Very quickly, because Honorable Sechitoreko would like to say something.
Maybe
yes, Honorable Sechitoreko, yes.
About somebody coming and saying government coming and forcing Bukumbi to give them the coffee. First of all, by the time Bukumbi gets to that level where UCDA is giving a license, they already have a contract, an international contract with their buyer. So how many cases is Uganda going to be answering for when we default on delivery, basically because government has bungled up? I don't think the government of Uganda is ready to do that type of thing.
Actually, the banks will jump on you before.
So for me, that is my comment about anybody forcing somebody.
Honorable Simam,
you have bought this coffee with your own money. you have got this contract, but we as government want this coffee, so you are out of that deal. Just I mean, the current policy in Uganda is that government will give the private sector a conducive environment in order for private sector to do business. I don't see government turning around and being the one to break what it has just set up.
Gabriel, I think when Mr. Bayingana was responding to what you raised, of course, I'd like to thank him. He's here a polite and with not painful. He talks with humility, and he does not want maybe to confront the system. This evening in Parliament, when the Agricultural Committee was responding to the ministerial policy statement, they raised an issue to do with the government program to a target of 20 million bags. Now you're saying we are exporting something like
about 7 million. Yeah.
Dr. Sechitoleko talked about 8 million bags. 2025 is just
around the corner.
Around the corner. But completely, there's no allocation to do with the seedlings.
Yes.
It is zero.
Yes.
The target is 20 million, but government has not allocated a shilling to UCDA to do with
right seed.
To provide the right seedlings. The ordinary farmer you're talking about has no capacity to come up with the right seedlings. Whether you're going to sell it at 2,000 shillings, it must be provided, but at least by a government agency. So now there's a conspiracy theory, which I believe, not just as a member of the opposition, but I've seen it happen, that this government wants to keep people in abject poverty, so that they can be, you just go around elections and you give 1,000 shillings and they all sing Yusuf, Yusuf. I had a situation, together with a group of people, we took a power line 4.5 kilometers. Government had promised power in that place for the last, how many years, since 1996. Before even completion, already people had put up 3 coffee factories and maize mills. But at the date of launching, so it was supposed to be launched in the evening, at 4:30 when people were just gathered, government brought 4 truck full of soldiers, military, in military uniform, and police, and they beat up people for 2 hours. So, meaning really, you're taking development to the people, and government is really beating up people. So, this contract, in a way, actually may be sort of a ploy, as you're saying, to discourage people to get involved in coffee. That's why actually with all this target, the budget has 0. When 70% of employment is actually agriculture. So really, do we really have a government which is looking forward to salvage its people from this kind of abject poverty? No, because you're just polite. And I thank your humility, because you really don't want to confront this system aggressively. Now, why should you have an agreement which is not clear? Dr. Sechitoleko is a consultant. He's not an ordinary mind. Actually, when he said we are supposed to relate with her, I said, why should I even go to that panel? Because she's a consultant. You know, if coffee is our biggest earner, and then you say, I don't know the thing behind the thing, but how can government come up with such an agreement, provide free land, provide all these incentives, unless there's something which must be clear to a consultant at the level of Dr. Sechitoleko?
And Dr. Sechitoleko served at some point as the Minister for Agriculture.
Yes,
we will continue to benefit from your knowledge.
I was a student at the University of Florida, and her name is everywhere. She would come as a consultant. UF University is almost number 11. But, you know, so I don't, you have the answer. Kindly please assist this country.
Assistant, give the answer. We need to go for a break.
Yes.
We need to go for a break at this point. But when we return, we've got to talk about, you know, how we move forward in order to benefit the sector and to also understand what the different players would actually... Coffee has now become a discussion. How do we benefit from this discussion so that we live with something tangible for the sector? Let's go for a break. After the break, we will continue this discussion.
CTV is now on StarTimes. You can now catch all your favorite programs, our daily comprehensive news bulletins, and so much more on StarTimes channel number 248. Stay tuned for a world of endless possibilities. CTV. Don't blink.
We entertain you. Ngawe tukuwati.
Amanya Shami Manja, Omobwat, President Bidabidi Mokaga, Kabonero Court.
Nanga went on Aliyah Namfuka, you can call me Aliyah one, but Tikutemo Walero.
I need to assume and to get a Kubanga to limit to the Venja.
Ania Yamba Dobulunji, Kapoya Tiaka Zekumembe. Ne Gaunia Black, Erina Tiara ya Black.
Tiara.
English of my kind. Tiara.
I feel the beat.
You feel the beat?
Yeah.
Show, budget, situations go ground. This is a professional actually.
Vera Coco CTV, totally.
Don't blink.
Now showing on CTV. Don't blink. As we embark on a journey to realize our full potential, we all need expanded minds and limitless possibilities. We need to be accurately informed. CTV is your growth partner. With reliable, in-depth news, we tell the story from all perspectives. We bring you the story in real time. Catch our comprehensive daily bulletins in Juba Egorovie at 7 p.m. and PM edition at 9 p.m. CTV, don't blink.
Welcome back from the break. This is the big debate on CTV. Glad that you have kept it here on the show. Today we're looking at the coffee sector, particularly an agreement between the government of Uganda and Uganda Vinci Coffee Company Limited. This agreement has caused quite a bit of conversation around the country. We have 4 guests discussing this. The Honorable Yusuf Nsibambi from Mawokota South constituency. Madam Agnes Chirabo from Food Rights Alliance, where she is the Executive Director. Mr. David Beingana, coffee exporter and CEO of Bukumbi Coffee Limited, and the Honorable Victoria Sechitoleko, who is the Vice Chairperson of the Private Sector Foundation Uganda, also a former Minister of Agriculture. Well, because of time, I'd like us to go to, our suggestions on how we can benefit from the situation we find ourselves in. Many of you have acknowledged that because of this agreement, coffee has moved to the front pages. And if I may use the Honorable Victoria Sechitoleko's, words, or Agnes's, sentiments as well, coffee has moved to where it should be, on the front pages. If we could get that from, and I will start with Honorable Sechitoleko, and the reason as to why I start with you is because the network may not hold on much longer, and so at any time we may have to allow you, to finish with us. So Honorable Sechitoleko, I'll begin with you on this one.
Yeah, for me, the way forward now should be for us to to behave like children who have got a family. Maif is our mother. This is the moment when we should ask Honorable Nsibambi and his other colleagues to say, contract or no contract, my Minister of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, can you tell us what is brewing for coffee? Because from another angle, I know that a lot is being worked on in order to invest in the coffee sector. Secondly, speaking from a private sector approach, quite a number of investors have just been licensed. You know, you go to Uganda Investment Authority and you set up have just been licensed to go into coffee. So, one, can we request Maif to tell us what is brewing, because I know there is plenty. Two, can we request the minister who signed this contract to explain it, because that is what Parliament is there for. You call the Minister of Finance to explain, so that those of us who are wondering what is behind this thing can have clarification from him. But finally, I wish to request all Ugandans to always remember that this country is ours, so you cannot give up because somebody has messed up here and you say, oh, now I'm giving up the coffee sector, maybe I'll go and do fene or I'll go and do avocado. This is our country. If you are planning to invest in coffee, go ahead and invest. Right. The only advice I want to give is that we Ugandans should stop to all of us crowd at the production level. You young people, you fresh graduates who graduated 10 years ago, please join coffee export. True, as Mr. Bengana has said, you need a lot of money in order to export. But I give you free advice. Start off by interning with Mr. Bengana, Bukumbi Farm, Bukumbi Coffee people. Go to Ankole Coffee Cooperative Union. They are making top dollar out of coffee. Go and intern there as a volunteer. Learn what it means to export coffee. And you'll be surprised how easy it is. Because most of the Ugandans who I know who are in coffee export are not graduates. Most of them are not graduates. They don't have masters, they don't have PhDs. Sometimes when you Ugandan children, when we take you to school, you start looking down upon certain things. But coffee, dealing in coffee is fantastic. There is strength in numbers. If there are many of you, many of us in the coffee sector, it is going to be difficult for any foreigner to come here and just walk all over us. I thank you.
Well, just before you go, was the private sector consulted on this deal, and should there have been consultation in your view? Honorable Sechitoleko, was the private sector consulted on this deal?
No, the private sector was not consulted. The first time I saw it was when somebody sent me a tweet the very day, like 1 hour after it had been signed. In fact, I remember I was actually attending a meeting with Maif. Then I read that they had signed such. But at that time, I did not ask Maif about it because the tweet was very short. So in short, we were not consulted.
Okay, and there are platforms where you interact with Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Finance. Have you put them to task in relation to this deal and making such, good deals available for Ugandans? Honorable Sechitoleko?
Yeah. I don't know where you have put your phone.
All right. Unfortunately, the network did not hold up for us to get a response to that question. Well, Agnes, yes. How do we make the best of this situation in your view?
You see, this coffee discussion has reminded me of once, not so long ago, in Parliament there was a piece of legislation. It was called the Plant Varieties Protection Bill. It's an intellectual property. It's a trade-related kind of instrument. But the fact that there was a word plant, it was sent to the Agriculture Committee. So even now, we are debating coffee, and I want to refrain. Yes, I'm a very good supporter and an advocate of the Ministry of Agriculture and agriculture as a sector. But what is also very important is the Ministry of Trade. It is the Ministry of Trade, those, what are they called, industrial parks?
Yes.
The industrial parks, those are programs and initiatives of Ministry of Trade. I'm still confident that the trade negotiators, the best trade negotiators we have in this country, are resident in the Ministry of Trade. This is a trade conversation. The crop is agriculture, but the deal is trade. And of recent, the Ministry of Trade is being made weaker and weaker. An example I can give you, when our maize was rejected by Kenya, you recall?
Yes.
The head of delegation was the Minister of Agriculture, which was purely a trade issue. But well, we are in a program approach. The two ministries are in the agro-industrialization program, and they are sharing that 1-point-something trillion being suggested for the program.
1.7.
Yes, they are sharing it. MTIC is part of the share. So that is number one. Number two is that we should have all of the strength to be part of the conversations over issues that concern us as Ugandans. Number three is, how do we position our agriculture sector in the bigger economics of the country? Because we have been telling people that the agriculture sector is up for grabbing, and nobody wanted to believe that. So they are coming for item by item. Why we went into program approach in the National Development Plan 3 is that we thought that the various sectors that are contributing to a certain output should work together to build that output. Value addition is all our desire, but value addition is not going to be done selectively by giving incentives and disincentivizing the others. All actors, including farmers, need an enabling environment to equitably compete, to equitably participate and take their fair share out of the entire deal. Right. The discussion today has revealed something new, that maybe the framers were ahead of us to put up something that is going to frustrate everyone else and favor one person. Because even when farmers choose to abandon, they may not completely abandon because they don't have livelihood options. So, if others get frustrated and the enabling environment is only created for one single entity, that is very, very dangerous, especially for indirect investments, because they shift their investment. It is premised on so many factors. There was a study a couple of years ago that came out here that most of the FDIs were not interested in these tax incentives. They were interested in some other things. But every time a poor country, everything that we put before the government is saying we don't have money, you recall COVID, you recall what. But even the little that we have collected, we are guaranteeing it to this particular person. And it is not my desire that we walk a journey that makes our institutions more weaker. We have just come up with a coffee law that at least gave a lot of administrative and regulatory mandate to the Coffee Development Authority. And Honorable Secretary was saying she's not expecting that the same government can undo what they have done. But they have done it. They have done it. The Coffee Development Authority is an agency of the Ministry of Agriculture. At least if the authority was there, because it's supposed to give a leveled ground to all of these actors. So when I tell you that the policy space for our government is becoming narrow every day, I want to believe that this very template of the contract was not even designed here.
Well, I will tell you, part of what has been said about this agreement is other players can benefit from these kinds of incentives. They are in the Ugandan laws, therefore, go ahead and request for them.
So if they are in
the
Ugandan laws,
benefit from them.
Gabriel, if they are in Ugandan laws, then why bother putting them, I mean closing them in a very specific agreement? If they are in Ugandan law and they are at large for everybody.
I take this from you know, the submissions of the Permanent Secretary and Secretary to the Treasury. Yes. And I hope that the team can just play a quick clip from him, because yes, one of the things he says, and I don't know if it will be in the clip, is that these incentives are given by Ugandan laws, and actors should benefit from these incentives. In fact, let's play that clip, and I will find out from Mr. Bengana if, you know, again, these incentives, you know, if you're benefiting from
and
them.
How quickly to get them.
How long it will take to get them?
Quickly.
Well, let's see.
Not
Let's see if the
long.
technical team can actually get to that clip of the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance.
This agreement was signed on February 10th this year to support the development of an $80 million integrated coffee processing plant to add value to Uganda coffee and export it globally. This agreement was signed following a protracted process of feasibility and due diligence and so on that started way back in 2015. The agreement was cleared by the Attorney General of Uganda, and it is within the laws governing this country. No single law was broken or scattered. This is a 60,000 ton capacity coffee processing plant, and it is going to support the realization of the government target of increasing the coffee production from the current 7 million bags, which translate into a total of 420,000 metric tons of coffee per year. In Uganda, currently we are producing a total of 420,000 metric tons of coffee, or about 7 million bags. I've heard people saying you are creating a monopoly. How can a monopoly be created when this plant is going to utilize only 6.4% of Uganda's coffee production at the year of start, and at the peak, even if we don't increase coffee production at all, it is going to consume only 5% of the coffee at full capacity. So there is nothing like a monopoly in this case. Not in the law. In Uganda, we don't create monopolies. And people need to start reading agreements, not signatures, and the headline, and you start running around.
All right. Well, we didn't get to the point where he says these incentives are in the Ugandan laws, that you can benefit from them. Are you going to benefit from them? Are you benefiting from them?
Which incentives? No, we have been operating. We are not benefiting from payment of? No, nothing. Of course, you know, the coffee does not attract export tax, so that is free because we pay cess 2%.
For your client.
For the plant.
Yeah, he's paying 5 cents.
I will try by not paying for the next 2 months.
You have to apply first. You have to apply first.
NSSF for your employees?
No, we
And
pay.
as you earn?
No, we pay all those things. Of course, this is one of the things. Now, the crux of the issue, I think, from the point of view that I'm looking at the thing from, I think it's a matter of bad execution of an intention, because you see, if you have, I'm being honest and practical. Germany does not have a single tree of coffee, not one, and they export coffee worth $254 billion every year. Okay, Uganda has not yet reached 1 billion, where most of the coffee which comes from here goes to the EU, and you can imagine most of it ends up in Germany and so on. So they add, so it's about value addition and so on. So I don't think anybody can argue about the issue of value addition. However, yeah, and nobody, I think, here can argue about that. So the issue, I think, must be about the execution of that intention, which in my view is very, very lacking. I think I wish these people could be more consultative in the things that they do, because for me, I would tell them for flat in the face that you see, like in our area, that it cannot work. From the dynamics that I've told you, the whole thing, you know, I think you need to study, like, possibly the dynamics of how something works before you just jump into the whole thing. So, and because of that, I am not extremely worried about the whole thing, because you have to know, first of all, she doesn't have, he doesn't, nobody has, you don't have. Do you have coffee? You don't have. If you have 1 acre or 2 acres like everybody else. I want to know how it will impact on people. There are guys like, you know, the biggest coffee plantation in this country is for a company called Kaweri.
Kaweri in Mubende.
In Mubende, it is 5,000 plus acres, I think. Kaweri belongs to a company called NKG, Neumann Cafe Group, which is the 6th largest coffee exporter. The ones who we are talking about, the other side. So, I mean, you can imagine how you're going to string people like those into this whole thing. They don't even sell. I know there's a time that I think Ucda was trying to buy seeds for seed multiplication and all that. They gave them a schedule of 3 years' time from now, because they are totally packed. So I think it's a little bit of a lack of understanding of the whole thing. Yeah?
Part of what is trying to be done here is encourage value addition.
Yes.
You are doing value addition.
I would like to think.
Pardon?
I would like to. I would like to think that was that was what was conceived in the first place.
So where should the incentives be put in order for us to see value addition?
Where the coffee is coming from. So people should benefit from those. It should be clear. This is something which is very... Let me tell you something. If you have a value addition component in this country, invariably farmers will benefit. That's without a doubt. I think Honorable Siwambi will agree. If somebody is here and they are roasting coffee, there is no way that they are going to pay you, because these prices now, the guy goes to Germany, then he does whatever it is. So if you short circuit all those things, then obviously things will be better. So I don't even understand why we have to go through all these semantics, because this is a demand and supply thing. You understand what I'm saying? Right. If you are giving us better prices for the coffee, we can bring it all to you. There is no problem. We don't even have to waste time exporting. You know, why would I export when you are in Namamve and you have your plant and you're paying? Do you get it?
For you.
It's a market dynamics thing. And the other way, it can't work because the thing comes from the farm.
But you're also concerned about this clause to do the determination of
price.
The price. I'll tell you about price determination.
Let's understand from you how exactly
price determination.
The price is
coffee
determined
after oil is the second most traded commodity in the world, and there is nobody in this country who controls the price of coffee. Every day we change our prices based. If it's Arabica, it's the New York Exchange. If it's Robusta, it is in London. That's how we do our prices. And let me tell you one thing. The farmers, because we are so many competitors in the market, and this one is being honest about pricing, within 2 or 3 days they know. Okay? Sometimes they think it was because of Christmas or Easter or something, but the crux of the issue, recently there was a frost in Brazil and the prices are now 2.5 times or 3 times higher because Brazil produces 60 million bags every year, and when they had a frost it destroyed all the crop. So everybody knows that for 2 or 3 years there is going to be not that much coffee coming out of that place. Vietnam had a problem because of Robusta, where they are the biggest producers of Robusta, and the same thing happened with, so these are market dynamics. Number two, UCDA does not determine the prices of coffee in this country.
Yes.
Okay? The prices are determined by demand and supply, and global one at that, not UCDA. UCDA simply asks you when you're registering an export, you're exporting to Agnes, okay, how much is it? And you're selling, you say, I'm selling at 254. There is actually even no, there is just, you ask me and I tell you that it was $3 or whatever it is. That's how the price, all their statistics they are based on. So, you know, the issue of price, that's why I'm telling you that that thing is not really implementable. You understand? Because you cannot come from there and tell me everybody else, the global price has gone up to 300 cents per pound, and then for you, you want to come and buy. So the price cannot be determined by any entity in this country. It's a free market. And I told you 80% of the players are not people who are local guys over here. And that's where the coffee ends up in that whole thing. So there are so many things. So for me,
what's happening in the fish industry, for example?
Well, fish is different. You see coffee, after, I want you to imagine how complicated the coffee thing is, because oil, for the last 38 years, coffee is the second, oil is the first. You know what happens in the oil. I don't have to go into those details. So that's why I'm telling you that it's not...
All right. Honorable Nsibambi, you were planning to go to court. I don't know if that's still your plan.
Yeah, I had that plan to go to court, not as Nsibambi, but as a shadow cabinet. We have consulted and we are still consulting, and I think by the end of the week we'll come up with a definite decision on the matter. But we want to, first of all, apart from challenging what Mr. Bayingana talked about to do with the unfairness in the industry, we really want also to challenge and seek for declarations on issues to do with government directives and agreements generally that really create obligations and undertakings on behalf of government without due consultation and process. So basically that's what we want to challenge, and we are determined to do it, but the definite decision is going to be agreed upon in a Friday meeting at the shadow cabinet.
You are an officer of court, and you know the length of time such processes usually take in our judicial system.
Yeah, we can seek interim declarations and orders. And we also have to test our institutions. We are not so comfortable with taking such matters to court, because at times we may end up giving legitimacy to matters which in the public court are irregular. So some of these courts may be squeezed and cajoled to come up with a decision maybe which is legal, and so you give legitimacy.
There will now be a position of court, and you now can't go against it.
So you give a legitimacy, but it's also good to test our institutions. We have no option. We can only go to court to come up with it.
But there is an agreement.
Yes, you
got a copy of this agreement. You tabled it before on the floor of Parliament.
Parliament has recommended that should be
Yes, that's a recommendation from Parliament, and you know how parliamentary, decisions are, handled by government. But as a lawyer, there's an agreement that's fully executed.
Yes.
What does this mean if Uganda is the one defaulting on its part of the agreement?
Yeah,
because we've been committed by these signatures.
Definitely, we have to compensate the other party, because...
Are you saying that either way, doesn't matter where this thing goes, it seems like the proprietors or whoever is behind Vinci will be getting compensation from the government of Uganda?
We're tied to this agreement of Umeme, with all the unfair clauses. Government could not withdraw because they were supposed to compensate the Umeme directors because of this bad agreement. So I think it's a big lesson to this country and the key players and people in authority and control of government to first of all consult. Even whether it is impractical, it cannot be enforced, but the agitation and anxiety created is unnecessary. So if these guys had consulted, for example, the representatives of the people and parliament, we now have to own this. Definitely no one is against adding value to our products. I agree with Mr. Bayingana. For example, I think we're exporting our coffee at $2-point-something
per pound.
Per pound. Rwanda is doing it at 5. Rwanda and Tanzania either 5 or 7. So there's that gap. So maybe when you withdraw from ICO and then you have value added, we definitely, in a way, we're supposed to benefit. But people are worried. Why should you now create a bit of exclusivity when it comes to an individual whose background is questionable?
All right. Agnes?
You see, one of the other concerns we have with this particular agreement is that the concessions we are making as a country are quite lengthy, like we have discussed on this show. But you can't clearly see the benefits that accrue from this particular agreement. And we know Council is here, and I know, Gabriel, you've been in that school, I have not. The issue of benefit sharing in these agreements is very, very critical. Very critical. And why we are arguing, like everybody has said here, we all desire not to give away our jobs. No. We desire to have value added. But this particular agreement does not clearly bring out these benefits. It is taking too much. I heard the PST talking about the $80 million. It is in his statement. It isn't in the agreement. And while you were discussing that particular agreement,
we read 200 and something jobs. He quoted 400.
And when I listened to him, I even got more worried. Did he really witness an agreement he had read? Or something, because whatever.
Well, this one, it amends. It's added to another because this is a deed of amendment and restatement.
A deed of amendment.
So maybe the original agreement states some of those things.
Stated. Everything is just funny. The lady did not sign as the main party to the agreement. She's signing as a witness. Everything's like somebody was panicking. We don't know what actually. But what we are arguing is that Ugandans need to see the benefits. We need to see the backward and forward linkages.
You hadn't seen that.
I just needed to check it again.
Everybody needs to see, because this is what the role of government plays. To position an initiative, and then the rest of us position ourselves along that. And this is what we are craving for. We are saying that government should be there to give the best deal for its people, for us.
Okay.
I would resign and go and attend to my few trees of coffee if a better deal has come here, but I'm here arguing because I'm not very sure, and even I've lost more hope of hearing that if they get frustrated,
they will leave very briefly. What does this mean for the farmer?
It means uncertainty.
Okay.
And that is the biggest problem with our agriculture sector. Whether the smallholder farmers or the satellite farmers, the phone call farmers, all of us dare to invest our little resources, whether our savings, into a sector that is full of uncertainty all of the time. And we would have done better for our coffee, at least if we haven't been able to do for anything. Would have done it better for our, how many of us have lost money pretending to go to agriculture. And that is why I scream most, because the smallholder farmers have endured that loss. So where it leaves the farmers and where it leaves the actors, it is uncertainty.
All right, Mr. Bengana, where does this leave the exporter?
The exporter? I actually don't think, you see, even from taking it from what the PSST is saying, if the ladies, without getting into the semantics, targeting 6% of the crop, I want to tell you that if you study the dynamics of that sector and appreciate that 80 to 85% of the coffee goes through those big players because of easier financing. Financing coffee is very difficult over here. These are people who get loans at very liberal rates, 2%, 2-3% per annum and that kind of stuff. So I think you just have to imagine a situation where if push came to shove and those guys jump the boat, you can figure it out for yourself. That's the whole thing. You know, it goes back down to the farmer. That's the long and short of it. That's the way you need to look at the whole thing. If this followed the other one and the other one followed this one, what's the logical conclusion of the whole thing?
All right, I need to get your parting shots.
Well, I gave them to you earlier. I told you that I think that value addition is a very, very important aspect of even of the coffee thing here, and it could, if it was coherently implemented, it is something that could do wonders for farmers, for things. We could do this. This is something that we could do ourselves, but I think that the execution and the spirit in which this whole thing was done is not, you know, the lack of consultation and all this sort of stuff, it really doesn't augur very well.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Agnes?
I just wish to add my voice that yes, we need value addition, but this is not how countries developed. Countries developed by supporting their people to grow their industries, to attract technology, and do better. We need to wake up that there are scams everywhere, irrespective of the color of the skin. So our arguments are not only to protect the sector and the actors therein, but our arguments as well are to protect our country, to protect our economy, and to protect our leadership.
The MPs are planning to go to court if the meeting on Friday decides that. What is civil society planning to do, if any?
There is definitely. Number one, so many people have threatened us that people in Uganda move on very fast. They don't know what is going to happen or be done, something funny next week, and all of us migrate. We wish to promise the people of Uganda that we are not sensational people as civil society. We are going to see that, one, we keep this debate in the public domain. We commit to support all efforts that look at this agreement and at the most undo the agreement. Either way, we shall pay anyway. We rather pay now by cancelling the agreement and liberate ourselves for the next 9 years. So we are going to support all efforts, all efforts that we find feasible.
Right.
And we are committed and we are pedaling on.
Honorable Nsibambi, you're parting short, but before you give that to us, when the government gets into a bad deal and we have officials who should be ensuring that the agreements we get into are good for the country, where does, you know, where is the fault put? Where is there a repercussion for
people to be accountable? Yeah, ideally, when you look at the office of the IGG, if it is an independent entity or agency, it should really handle such matters without even us going to court as members of parliament, because our mandate, of course, talks about oversight, but you should not stretch to even going to court, because it means committing resources and time outside what we are supposed to do. but the IGG's office, of course, itself it has its shortcomings in terms of the budget and even in terms of appointment. So they don't want to annoy the appointing authority maybe, but the IGG should have taken up such matters of Rubowa and this kind of contracts. There are actually many contracts of this nature, only that we are lucky to have gotten this. I don't know how it was. Yes. Yeah, personally, I'm happy for the first time that Parliament has come up with a joint position on this matter, and they have recommended cancellation of this contract. They have also recommended again stopping the payment and cashing of the promissory notes to do with these directors, and I think they should have gone ahead to say maybe let's wait for the report of the Finance Committee, which is visiting Rubowa this evening. At least that is here a positive step. I want to join my colleagues here to say we are all happy to add value to most of our products so that we can really earn better income than what is derived from ordinary export of beans. But I'm worried that the president, with due respect, and a few close cronies are controlling virtually everything, and the rest of the other participants are actually struggling to squeeze and fight within the system. And this is clear from the fishing industry, even petty exports and imports of rice. So really people feel like they are just given an opportunity to exist in their own country. There is no logical explanation as to why the government gives such incentives and exclusive, conducive environment to one foreign company when the rest are struggling. I can give my maybe it's not fair to talk about myself, but recently I went up to a Minister of Finance, had gotten financing of a loan above $5 million. I will not state the loan and the purpose of the business. And it was, I had all the write-ups. They said, you know, you have to go through cabinet, and then you also have to go through Parliament. For Parliament what? To approve the loan. And that's the law. So I appreciated that maybe I will not qualify. But for this kind of contract, you're giving out land and incentives again in that, and there's no cabinet participation, there's no parliamentary approval, you see. So that's why people feel like they're uncomfortable and offended. So no one would be happy to see, I'm sorry, I'm not really racist, but worldwide, a foreign company enjoying exclusivity and that kind of, it's beyond ordinary hospitality. When for you are just struggling, when you're creating value, and you're creating jobs for your own people. So I think those are issues which must be considered squarely.
We have to end here mainly because of time, but this conversation definitely continues. Of course, in our bulletins that come at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m., but also in or on our social media platforms. We'd like to thank our guests for tonight, the Honorable Yusuf Nsibambi, the MP for Maokota South, also the Shadow Minister for Transport and Works and Transport, yes, Executive Director of Food Rights Alliance, Agnes Chirabo, Mr. Bengana David from Coffee, he's a coffee exporter and CEO, New Bukumbi Coffee Limited, and earlier on a guest who had to leave, the Honorable Victoria Sechitoleko, Vice Chairperson of the Private Sector Foundation, Uganda. Thank you very much for participating in the big debate today.
Oh, thank you.
Like I said, the conversation continues, so continue using that hashtag and look out for our news, because even the stories about the decision that Parliament made today will be covered in our news. From me and our guests, it's a good night. God bless you. Don't blink.